the trees around us prepare for a new season, showing their autumn colors, we too embrace change by transforming a relatively young Japanese yew from the nursery, giving it a new identity. In bonsai, true beauty is not found in the youthful, lush forms of a tree, but in highlighting its asymmetry, its austere nature, and its journey towards maturity. Like the tree, we too must undergo radical change before becoming our best selves. Hey Bonsai Society, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we're going to be working on some nursery stock. This is a dwarf yew. The cultivar name is Monglo. It was grown in Canada, but it is a Japanese yew. Speaking of Japan, don't forget we're about 40,000 subscribers. We're trying to get to 100,000, so if we get there, we'll be bringing you all to Japan. In the meantime, subscribe, please. So today we're going to be working outside. It's a bit cold, chilly outside. As you can see behind, the leaves are changing color. We're fully into autumn here. Let's get started on this tree now. I'm going to take it out of its nursery pot and try to find the nabari, the base of the tree, see what I want to use as the front of my tree. As you can see, I'm just scratching the surface of the soil to find the main roots. It's called finding the nabari. I've already removed about 2 inches of soil here, so that's quite a bit. There's more and more trunk that's being revealed. You have to go down till you see some of the main roots that are coming straight off the trunk here. So you have to go down quite a bit sometimes. There are some roots that are wrapping around the trunk. I am going to remove some unnecessary branches, and this tree actually divides itself into 2. One part goes to the right, the other to the left here. I don't think we can keep both sides unless I wanted to do a cascade or semi-cascade style. I probably will be removing half of the tree before I get started choosing branches. Right now I am just removing some of the unnecessary branches so I can see into the tree. It's always the most critical moment, trying to decide what is going to be the future shape of the tree. You have to sort of judge it from well, the trunk movement, do I want it to go this way or the other way? And what would be, if I do choose my future, my trunk, do I want to, what are going to be the main branches? This trunk here, the one on the left-hand side, is pretty weak. And it doesn't have any sort of taper to it. It's the same width from here right up to the top. The branches, there's a very weak branch here, and this branch is not too strong. So I think I've made a decision here to cut off the first branch, or the big branch here on the left hand side. I don't really want to leave much of a gin. This cultivar is said to only grow up to about 30 inches tall, but it can spread out to about 9 or 10 feet wide. So I'm going to have to watch out as I, in the future, as I work on this tree, to not cut back the top because it doesn't have any apical dominance, and severely cut back the lower branches. And we're going to cut off this very, very long branch. Now, why didn't I keep the longest and strongest branch? Because I wanted taper. I wanted really a trunk that starts quite thick and then it gets steadily thinner and thinner as I go toward the top of the tree. Now what I'm doing over here, this large branch that I cut off, I'm creating a jin out of it. A jin is a dead stump or a dead branch, and I'm ringing it with my concave pruners, and I will remove the bark on it. That will kill the branch, and it creates character on a tree. It's aesthetically, on a conifer, it's considered to be quite beautiful. I'll create another jin from the other big branch that I removed. Do it while the branch is freshly cut, because it makes the branches very flexible and the bark will just slide off. Now we've removed some of the bottom branches. We'll work our way up towards the top of the tree. I have two choices. I have this branch here, or I have another branch heading off to the side. There's probably about 10 or 15 buds in there, so it will become my top. I don't like sharp angles, and the bigger branch, which could become the top, is too much at a sharp angle, so I will remove it there. Now I will be making the other choice of main branches along my trunk. I've just decided that I'm going to cut off this very long branch, only keep part of it. The branches should get steadily shorter as we go toward the apex of the tree. So now we can start to see the shape of the tree appearing over here. I'm choosing a few branches to be back branches, so just eliminating some smaller branches. Always better to keep smaller branches rather than thicker ones, because they're more in proportion to the thickness of your trunk. The smaller branches will eventually get thicker. They'll be delicate in appearance and give your tree a more graceful appearance. We've removed a lot of the branches that we really don't need. We've chosen our main branches. Now I'm going to thin out some of the main branches. I'll thin them out a little bit, and then we'll get to wiring. It's always pleasant working with yews, because yews are very forgiving. They send out new growth all along the branch, contrary to pines or spruces, or even sometimes Chamaecyparis and Thuyas. When you get toward the top, always leave more branches, because your apex has to be quite full. Right now these branches were cut back short at a former nursery, but all the buds are there. We can now see that our trunk has wonderful movement here, a nice curve. This is quite an interesting curve, but from here up to here it's very straight. So I will correct that now with some wire. I'll be using some aluminum wire today. We're going to have to use wire that's about half the thickness of the trunk or branch that we want to move. So as you can see, it says 4 millimeter here, all right, and that's about what we need for wiring that branch. We really don't need that much wire, because we're not wiring the whole trunk. It doesn't need to be wired. The curves are already quite interesting. It's starting from here to there. You do have to anchor your wire somewhere. Now that's a good reason for creating jins also, because they're great anchoring points for wire. Now on this one I want to move this branch in this direction, so my wire is going to have to come from behind to push it forward. Here we are wiring this. Now your spacing should be about, I'd say about a 60-degree angle. Remove all of the branches that are in the way. And finally, we reach to the top. It's a bit short for my fingers. The wire is not short itself. I've measured it correctly. Why do I like to use longer pliers? It gives me more leverage, so I'll just get them. And you can actually grab the branch on the side like this and bend and bend. So now we're going to be wiring the main branches. Always start at the lower ones, work your way up. So we'll be wiring from here up to here. This one's a little bit thicker, but they're my two thickest branches. I'll be using about 2.5 millimeter for that. Now again, the key is to always use one wire and wire two branches with it, so the wire will be anchored. Now I could anchor again on gins, but if you have separate wires for every branch, they just cover your whole tree. If there's too much wire on the branch, it prevents, oops, I want to go the other way, it prevents you from bending.
How many trees do you think you've wired in your lifetime?
How many trees have I wired during my lifetime? Probably, it's been like 54 years wiring, and for 30 years that's what I did from morning till night. Is, well, not wiring every single day, but probably at least about maybe 10,000 trees in my lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now I wire relatively quickly, but I've seen Japanese that are ambidextrous, that can literally wire in two different directions with two different hands. I'm not that good, no. I could not do that. Now, why would I want to move the branches? Well, if you have a curved trunk, your branches have to be in harmony with the curved trunk. And in this case, you can't have a curvy trunk and straight branches. If you have a slightly curved trunk, then your branches should all be slightly curved. Not only from sideways, from left to right, but also up and down. If you have a very straight trunk, you can keep your branches straight. In this case, I'm going to curve them slightly toward the front and give them some movement. This is a slightly curving trunk, so I don't want to exaggerate my curves. Now, you have two choices when you're wiring branches. You can either do all of the main branches along the trunk and then start on the secondary branches, or you can do each branch one at a time. It's really anathema to cross wires because, well, when one crosses over the other, it loses its bite into the branch. It doesn't hold as well if the wire is crossing. Wonderful thing about working with yews is that even if you are missing a branch somewhere, the yew will probably send out new growth, and you'll have really branches that ramify very, very easily. In fact, maybe that will be a disadvantage. Now, the fall is the greatest time of year for repotting these trees. Sorry, not repotting, for wiring trees, pruning and wiring. Repotting, it's not the best time, especially right now where today is the 10th of October. So it's not the time of year for repotting. Really, truly not. Not here in our climate, maybe in other climates. Now this is called fine wiring. It can be arduous. That's what sometimes takes forever when you're wiring bonsai. We've got our first branch wired. It'll be faster wiring the other ones, but it'll give you an idea as to what we're expecting of this tree here. So this is the first branch that's wired, and then we'll get to the others in just a moment. Now, if you don't have all the different sizes of wire, there's about 9 different sizes, and you should probably have every one of them from 1 millimeter right up to 6 millimeters. Sometimes you can go to 11 or 12 if you can get your hands on 6.5 millimeters, 7, 7.5, 8, and 9. But most dealers don't handle that. It goes by 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, right up to 6 millimeters. And you need different sizes because every branch is a different size. So it's important to get your hands on them. But if you don't have the perfect size, you can always go up one size, never down. Why? Because if your wire is too thin, you won't be able to bend, and that's the reason why we're wiring. If in doubt, use a thicker wire rather than a thinner one. So there we go with our second branch. Now we're going to move upwards. There is a very small branch right here that I want a branch in the back between our first 2 branches, and there's a very small branch here that I will keep and wire with a fine wire to create a back branch. Okay, this is a massive Japanese yew, Taxus cuspidata capitata. I actually got it dug out of a nursery about 25 years ago. It was transported, balled and burlap, transported and put in my yard with a huge crane. I've reduced the root ball quite drastically. It's now growing in about a 7-inch deep wooden box. I do cut back the foliage every year. I will be transforming it into an upright Shokan style bonsai, probably about 2.5 feet tall, with a huge amount of dead wood, a lot of dead wood on this tree. There's going to be cherries running down the trunk, a lot of gin, and I think it'll make a pretty impressive looking bonsai. I'll be working on it within the next year.
What got you into it though? What the first time you ever discovered or said to yourself,
my mom had gone to California and bought a book on bonsai, and I was fascinated by it, and I wanted to create bonsai like I saw in the book. But at the time there were no bonsai pots available. It was very difficult to find material, so I just I sort of improvised. I dug out small trees in the forests, in the fields, and there were no bonsai pots available where I lived, so I had to I got clay saucers and drilled holes in the bottom. It was about the only thing you could do to have a shallow pot to plant in. We couldn't find bonsai soil, so I found clay soil and baked it to try to harden it so I could have pieces. That didn't work very well. It was fun because it was a pioneering adventure. Nobody else had done it, so I found it exciting to sort of learn it at first on my own. Then I went on to study it with Jerry Stoll and Lynn Perry Allstat, and then I went to Japan. So yeah, it took a while to learn it. Today people are very lucky to have access to the internet and all sorts of exciting ways of learning bonsai that we didn't have in my time. As you can see, we're steadily moving upwards and upwards and upwards. We'll place it at the proper angle in a minute or two. I'm doubling my wire because the one I put on was not quite thick enough to move this branch. The whole purpose of wiring is to be able to move branches, to position them where you want them to go. It's never as good as the proper wire, really, the proper sized wire. It's never quite as effective. It doesn't move it as well, but still, it's better than nothing. This will actually be a very small sized bonsai. It will measure between a shohin size, which is a miniature size, and what I would call a medium size, a chu bonsai. So it's basically this size is actually now considered legitimate size. It's called kifu in Japan, the kifu size. Okay, so we're going to put it now at the proper angle and look at it and see, place our branches. It's very important to not have one branch on top of another. We have to position each and every branch so that it will get full light. I don't like repotting at this time of year because it's not the right time of year, but I can, without playing around too much with the soil ball, I can just put it in a pot to show you what type of pot I think it should go into. This is the finished product here, all right? So now I will put a smaller pot in front of it so that you will be able to get an idea of the finished product. Actually, your pot should be about 2/3 the height of the tree. I chose one very quickly. It's almost the height of the tree. This is a very pretty handmade pot. It's made by an American. His name is Steve Gossert, sorry. It's called Mountain Spring Bonsai and Ceramics. I bought it when I was teaching in Harrisburg, and it's a very pretty, it's well-made pot. It looks old, and it's a sort of a reddish clay body, and a reddish color goes very well with the reddish color of taxus, of yew trees. Although the pot's a little bit large, we could put it in this pot in the spring, and it'll soon fill out the pot. I don't like putting it back into its plastic nursery pot because we've removed a lot of the foliage. There's going to be less demand on the roots, and if it stays in a big pot, it'll stay wet much longer because there's not as much foliage to pull the humidity. I prefer to put them in slightly smaller pots. I'd probably put it in a Japanese training pot. This one's a bit small. This one's a number 7, not 7 inches. They just call it a number 7. So it actually used probably a number 8. These pots are quite shallow. They have very large drainage holes. They even have smaller holes for tying your tree into the pot. A nice feature also is they have raised feet so that when you sit the pot on the table, the water drains out quite readily. So I really like using these Japanese training pots when I'm shaping bonsai. Here we've got a number 8 here, and so I just remove a little bit of the outside soil. It's not, remember, it's not a repotting because this is not the time of year to repot a tree. So I would just remove a little bit on the outside to get it into that pot. Yews are very easy. they send out new growth. They have a continuous growth in the spring. So they send out new growth pretty well over 2 or 3 months. So you can repot them anytime between April and the beginning of June. Okay, I think it'll go into the bonsai pot now. So I'll just cover the roots here so that they won't dry out in winter. In the winter, probably I'll keep it in my studio with a temperature of about 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, which is probably just around, just above freezing, about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll keep it in there, and don't water it very often. I probably, because it's so cool, probably water 2 or 3 times in the winter. I check weekly, but especially in the beginning of the winter, I water very, very rarely. You want to keep them on the slightly drier side, not too dry, but on the drier side. In the spring, it'll get potted up into a bonsai pot, and it should be quite happy that way. Okay, that's a wrap for today's master class. The format of this tree is slightly smaller than I usually work on, but let me know if it's more relatable. So that's all for today. Send me your comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks a lot, folks. This transformation is followed by a quiet, dormant period where we must question if the effort was worth it. But in time, new growth will emerge stronger and more refined. We will appreciate the tree in its new light, elevated and cherished. Though this journey towards becoming a masterpiece is slow, these moments are the stepping stones to a new day.